Hey guys, so as you can tell by the title, this isn't going to be a typical remember the hyphen. I didn't really feel like it was appropriate to, thank you, start with that. As you know, last week we lost Kevin Conroy. He passed away at the age of 66 due to a battle with cancer. Kevin Conroy, of course, for those of you who somehow don't know, being the voice of Batman in Batman the Animated Series, the new Batman Adventures, Arkham games, the Justice League, scaves of DC animated properties.
Playing Bruce Wayne in the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover.
Yeah, playing, like, I want to say he also did voice work for some of the Birds of Prey show. I want to say he did the voice of Batman.
He might have, I'm not sure.
Because I know they got handled.
I know he voiced Batman of Zor-On-Raw and Brave and the Bold.
He also did the Phantom Stranger in the I Am the Night episode of Batman the Brave and the Bold, which is honestly probably the best episode of Batman the Brave and the Bold. Although, to be fair, that show is quite good. And otherwise, he has done a plethora of voice work over the years. So it was a very big hit for the community.
I know damn well it ruined my day.
Yeah.
I hadn't even punched in at work yet. I kind of just sat down to eat, and I was like, well, that kind of ruined my day.
Yeah.
Then we went and saw Black Panther that night, and it just kind of... That whole day kind of...
No, that whole day
was kind of shitty.
I want to say this is probably the biggest hit the Batman community has taken since the death of Adam West. Which I actually saw, like, a really moving artwork of Conroy's Batman going into the afterlife with Adam West in the 60s Batmobile waiting for him while Kilmer and Keaton, Batman, Affleck's Batman, they all, said goodbye to him as he moved on. So tonight, basically this is us talking about our own personal experiences with Conroy as Batman and discussing, I think, what made him so powerful and why this was such a great loss for not just the Batman community, but the superhero fandom as a whole.
It might be one of the few times me and Adam have actually, what's the right word? What is the word right now? We're wearing Batman stuff. We at the same time.
Oh,
what's that word?
Oh, I know what word you're thinking of. We
cooperated.
Yeah, we'll say that's the word.
It'll come to me later, but I mean, I'm wearing my Batman Beyond sweatshirt.
Yeah, it's. Do you mind if I kind of go first? Since
you have the floor.
I grew up like the most during Conroy's tenure as Batman.
You're a little older than me, so I mean, I was born '95.
I mean, granted, the original animated series premiered in '91, just after the release of Batman Returns, which shaped a lot of what made
a Batman property.
Yeah, it was what made the Batman animated series. Like the Joker in that series, his real name was Jack Napier. Catwoman was blonde, like Michelle Pfeiffer. The Penguin takes a lot from Danny DeVito's Penguin.
The Batmobile.
The
design of the Batcave.
The Batcave. The Batplane, or the Nightwing.
The theme.
The theme. The 1940s Greco art style. And at that point, Batman fever was like at its highest since like the original 66 show. And so when they made that show, I don't think they ever expected it to become a cultural icon as it was. It didn't just shape how we do superhero cartoons. It shaped like the superhero medium as a whole. I actually remember because I've seen some of the behind the scenes stuff of this. When Kevin Conroy originally did this, he was actually at first hesitant with the role because he didn't want to do it and become typecast.
Which is ironic given that Mark Hamill, his co-star, was kind of trying to get out of the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
After finding success with Luke Skywalker.
And he had also he had known Batman, but he is not like the biggest fan of him. But of course, the show took off to a massive amount of popularity, which helped. But I always remember the most interesting story about it was after the events of 9/11, when Conroy, who was living in New York, was helping at shelters with the firemen that were dealing with the towers, and he had done his famous line of "I am vengeance, I am the night, I am Batman," and how much hope that gave to people. And I think it kind of made him rethink his position on Batman and what it meant to him. I always think the reason why I was so drawn to the character when I watched this show as a little kid, I mean, aside from the fact that it was about Batman, and as an adult now that was how much the show really pointed out how human the character was. And I think Conroy was one of the biggest reasons why that character had such a humanity to him. And he not only had humanity with the character, but the character grew and evolved through each show that he did him in. You know, to the point where, like, he was doing such an amazing job as an 80-something-year-old Bruce Wayne in the Batman Beyond series, where he was acting as a mentor to Terry McGinnis. And, like I said, for so many people, I think he wasn't just the Batman cartoon character. He was Batman. I know when I read Batman comics, that is the voice I hear in my head for Batman.
I was just gonna say, I don't think I ever pick up a Batman comic and not read it in Kevin Conroy's voice.
Yeah. The same way with Hamill. In fact, like, to the point where, like, the two of them have had this amazing friendship because of doing Batman and the Joker. Ironically, given those two hate each other, the characters, that these two would become so entwined with each other to the point where, like, I know, like, towards the later time of their career, they actually would be like, I'm not doing this unless Conroy.
Yeah, I was just about to say that they were kind of a package deal.
But yeah, I think Conroy put so much humanity into the character. Something that I feel like a lot of modern writers miss. You know, that in spite of his exorbitant wealth and the gadgets and all the things we put onto Batman, that really he's still that little 8-year-old boy who watched his parents get gunned down and all sense was stripped from him. You know, I don't think anyone has ever put more feeling into that character than Conroy. Would you agree?
Yeah, if there's one thing I would definitely say, I think, is why Kevin's portrayal in any series or medium that he did it in worked so well, was that it's almost like that version of Batman that he played was always consistent in it was the most well-rounded portrayal of the character I think we've ever seen.
Yeah.
I think we've had a lot of on-screen portrayals of Batman, some of them better than others, some of them, you know, more so highlighting a different aspect of the character. I don't think there's really ever been one portrayal other than Conroy's that's really just gotten every facet of the personality of Batman.
I would argue the closest would probably be Keaton's, but even then, like, Burton's Batman is kind of weird in certain points.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. If we're gonna talk about anything that comes close, it would definitely be Keaton. But I think everything that Keaton's Batman portrayal was amplified and made better by Conroy.
I would agree. I think probably the thing, like, you know, because we could talk about all sorts of high points for his career. I think probably the biggest would be talking about, you know, probably the greatest achievement of the animated series as a whole, which would be Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Which delves into the origins of the animated series Batman and how he almost could have walked away from being Batman. And in my opinion, I think it's where Conroy really hit his stride as Batman. Excuse me. I I think no other moment in that movie hits harder than when he is at the grave begging his parents to let him take back the promise. You know, with the rain pouring, and he's like, I can give more money back to the city. I can help the cops in Gotham get more prepared for the crime, and
I need it to be
different now. I didn't count on this. I didn't count on being happy. Or, you know, particularly that scene with him and Alfred at the end of the movie where, you know, he says, I couldn't save her, Alfred.
And I kind of going back to what I mentioned, I think those two scenes highlight the humanity with Batman more so than any scene, perhaps other than Keaton laying the flowers in Crime Alley.
Yeah.
Has ever done for showing the audience, you know, stripped back, this is what the character is.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like, yes, he's Batman. You know, he's a symbol of justice, a symbol of fear for any evildoers within Gotham, if not the world. But at the same time, at the end of the day, he's a man.
Yeah. But you know, in that regard, he was also. It also. This, in my opinion, more so than any other Batman, was a Batman that actually tries to do good for his villains as well. Probably one of my favorites would be the scene at the end of Harley's Holiday, where he gives her the dress. You know, and he actually wants her to recover and actually start a new life. You know, and he hands her that dress, and she's like, why were you following me all day? He's like, you just had a bad day. I had a bad day once. Which I think the animated series took that line, and Conroy took that line and did it better than the Killing Joke did. Where it proves, you know, Batman had a bad day once too, but it didn't make him decide to be worse for it.
And you see this a lot with any of the villains, really. I mean, Clayface, he wants to help Carlo get better. Mr. Freeze, he wants to help Victor get better.
Even Cure Nora.
Yeah. To the point that in, you know, Batman Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero, he goes back for Freeze.
Yeah.
You know, even to the point that he knows it might be a suicide mission. You know, that he even tells Robin, like, you know, if I'm not back, go without me.
Speaking of, I'm glad you brought up Robin. The entirety of Robin's Reckoning, well, I know a lot of people, for people, it's about that Robin, but it's such a fantastic character story about why Batman needs Robin. And about why Bruce did what he did with Dick. Because, you know, I know a lot of people like to point out that Batman is making child soldiers and all this other...
I just fucking read an argument out there on Facebook
hypocritical
today,
crap. You know, and that scene where he has little Dick on the bed. I know what I just said there. That's not... Okay. And, you know, he talks about how he lost his parents, too. And, you know, and Dick asks him, will it ever stop hurting? And I don't know why these lines are so great, but I only could say it's to Conroy's acting. Will it ever stop hurting? I wish I could say it will. But this time it will. For you, things will be different. That, like, the whole reason he takes these children in is because he sees what could happen to these children. Because he knows. Because he is seeing himself in these children. And he is not going to let them become as broken as he is. And to that regard, you know, I always say Dick Grayson is probably Batman's greatest achievement because he did not want that little boy to become a broken shell of a person that he is. You know, again, to quote the end of Robin's Reckoning, when, you know, Dick realizes why Batman didn't want him helping with this case. And Batman's like, it wasn't just that you would fall down a darker path. Zuko had taken so much from you. I didn't want him to take you too. You know, and then Bruce Timm later would screw that up by having Batman sleep with Barbara. But we don't talk about that.
That never happened. What are you talking about?
But no, I wish more people talked about Robin's Reckoning because, in my opinion, I think it's one of the better episodes, probably one of my top 10 favorite story episodes in that show because it perfectly describes why Batman has Robin. You know, and shows the parental relationship that so many people have attached to Batman and his family. You know, the point where you have that web series with, you know, the Batman Family Adventures, which in my opinion is one of the greatest web comics ever, because it actually, I think, better captures how the Bat Family should be than most modern DC comics. You want to talk about any particular episodes of Batman that you think?
I actually kind of just want to discuss something as a whole. And
Go ahead.
So, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a lot younger than Adam. So when I grew up, TAS wasn't on TV anymore. Like at least I wasn't getting a channel that was doing the reruns.
I was about to say,
I wasn't even getting reruns of Beyond. So my experience to Conroy's Batman was primarily, I had a bunch of the Batman Beyond episodes on tape, and I had Mask of the Phantasm and Sub-Zero.
Yeah.
So when it came to Conroy's portrayal as a younger Bruce, I just had those two things. That was it.
Yeah.
So my experience to his portrayal was more so early on, much more through Batman Beyond than it was anything else. And I think that's possibly why I've always been so drawn to Beyond, and I think it's just such a fascinating character study.
Yeah.
Is that Conroy's performance of it is, you can tell he's the same person.
Yeah.
But he's much older. He's a lot more grizzled, you know? He's
lost so much.
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to say, and like, there's so many moments in Beyond that highlight that.
Yeah.
Such as, like, one of my favorites is always, two of my favorites actually are, forgive me, I forget the villain it was. The one that was trying to drive him insane with the sound.
Oh, Shriek.
Shriek. Okay, I thought it was Shriek, but, you know, he mentions to Bruce, he's like, "I'm your worst nightmare, old man." And Bruce just looks back at him and instantly is like, "You have no idea what my nightmares are like." And I think that line alone encompasses so much of that Bruce's character in Beyond and where he's gotten to. And it's a little bit of everything. It's a little bit of heartbreak, you know, because we've saw the character in what you could almost argue he was getting to a better point in his life, you know, that he had gotten to a point where maybe the pain of losing his parents wasn't so great.
Yeah.
And then to see that all these years down the road, he still ended up right where he was.
Yeah.
Only to once again be brought back out by having a mentorship with a younger character. Like, I think that's just, it's such an interesting concept, and I don't think we see it enough in comics or really in media in general when it comes to superhero stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, Kevin throughout every single episode knocked it out of the park. I always loved in Beyond when they would do callbacks to other stuff. And sometimes, like, Kevin didn't even need to do anything to make it sound or look like just as impactful as it is. Like, when Terry borrows the jacket and it has DG on the collar, you know, and he asks, like, you know, who's DG? Conroy doesn't even have a line in that, but just the way that the character reacts to it.
Yeah.
That silence is almost just as loud as any line of dialogue in that, you know, all these years later, there's more of that relationship and where it's gotten to.
Yeah.
Or another line that I love, and there's going to be a lot of Beyond lines in this because after Kevin's passing, I honestly watched a lot of Batman Beyond just to try to come to terms with, you know, what had happened. Another one of my favorite lines is where he takes Terry to Crime Alley.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And you know, Terry mentions like why do you want this still standing? Would you want to forget where your father's murder happened?
Yeah.
And even then, like, and this is such another nod to just the direction of Beyond and how good it was.
Yeah.
That scene where Bruce walks through the ruins of the old GCPD building.
Yeah. Oh my God, I remember that. Like the point where there's still wanted posters of the Joker.
Which is the last time we see that design of the Joker, by the way. Because the next time we see him is in Return of the Joker, and it's the newer design.
Which is kind of like
it's a blend.
Well, it's kind of like the pre-look that like they would eventually settle on with the Joker in the Justice League cartoon.
Yeah.
Which in my opinion is like one of the better Justice versions of the character.
Another good one would be you know, in my head it called me Bruce. In my head, that's not what I call myself.
Yeah, what do you call yourself?
He just, he just looks at him. It's like,
oh yeah, we should forget that's my name now. Tell that to my subconscious. I'm like,
yeah, and there's just so many. There's so many good, good episodes of Beyond that just highlight this. And I think just as much as you see Terry McGinnis grow over the course of that series and the film, you likewise see Bruce kind of open back up. You know, he'd been so closed off to everyone for so long, which we later find out is a lot, and due in part a lot to the end of
Return of the
Joker. You know, it's almost like a redemption in and of itself.
Yeah.
Is that, you know, like even in the twilight of this man's life, he still was the hero.
Yeah, and he still cared about his children.
Yeah.
It's just what the Joker did that night had hurt him so bad. He basically, what seemed to be like he was finally tearing those walls down, he put them back up because he believed that he was protecting them from himself. Hell, speaking of Return of the Joker, probably one of the most memorable lines.
Flashback.
Is when he.
I was about to say, are you going to bring up the flashback?
You know, is after Joker's whole monologue about what he did to Tim and about how he knows what that brute, like, you know, and how is when he is straight up about to kill the Joker and he tells him, "I am going to rip you in two." Like, that's like one of the few lines that Conroy has.
The way Conroy just says it, it's so low. Like there's emotion in that, and it's barely restrained.
Like
it's a side of Batman that we really haven't seen.
Yeah.
You know, because he's never let the Joker get to him that bad.
Like, the only time I think that I've ever seen Batman get that bad was after he believes Joker killed Tommy Elliott in Batman Hush. And even then, he doesn't talk during that. He is trying to slowly strangle the Joker to death. And all you get is the dialogue in his head where he is going through every single atrocity that the Joker has done to him or Gordon. And at the very end is when he says, "I will not ever hold myself responsible for anything Joker has done, except that I should have killed him long ago." And it is probably one, like, much like that, like, it is probably one of the most chilling things you see the character. And again, going back to why that humanity is so important and why Conroy captured it, because when Batman gets to his lowest lows or his highest highs, it's because at the end of the day, he is a human doing things that should not be possible.
Yeah.
And coming out on top, which is what I think draws so many people to that character.
I personally think one of the most powerful lines in the entire show is in the very beginning of Rebirth. You know, where he does the never again.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God, no. That... Like, I think that is actually where Conroy has Batman at his most tired.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that line is haunting. Like, you know, there are so many things I remember about both shows, and it just shows how well Conroy had the character, even like in the early days of playing him.
And I mean, something I've always been grateful to Kevin for was, like I said, when I was a kid, I was a very big Batman TAS and Batman Beyond fan. And then there was a long period of time where I just wasn't into superhero stuff. Like, you know, I went and saw the Nolan films because I was still a Batman fan, but it wasn't nearly as good, in my opinion, as what I had grown up with. And then I remember I was at my sister's one day, and, you know, they had Arkham City.
Yeah.
And they hadn't been able to get past this one part. And so my sister was like, "Here, why don't you play it? See if you can get past this part." And so I took it home, you know, I installed it, threw it on, and I actually credit that's what got me back into superhero stuff in general, was that game.
Yeah.
You know, and the minute I heard Kevin's voice, I was like, that's my Batman in this. You know, and it was the same as when I heard Hamill's Joker in that. It was like, this is like playing what I grew up with. You know, and like I said, I give that game a lot of credit for getting me back into. At first, it was just, you know, I got back into Batman.
Yeah.
And then it was more so I got back into other superhero stuff. So it was almost like, whereas Kevin's performance in TAS and Beyond was really my gateway into comic book stuff.
Yeah.
It was just as much what pulled me back in was his performance in the Arkham games.
Yeah.
Which is just as much on the top tier of quality as he was in TAS.
Yeah. I honestly believe that the Arkham games were probably one of the greatest things not just because it's like one of the greatest like tie-in games ever made, or the fact that it's like one of the few good comic book games ever made. Was the fact that they wanted to take from every facet of Batman. You know, like, it wasn't just like they focused on TAS
yes, or the original stuff. It was such a perfect blend, an amalgamation of so many different sources.
Yeah.
That you could almost argue it might be one of the most purest Batman takes we're probably ever going to get.
Yeah, I honestly would argue so. Like, the only thing I've ever seen come close to trying to make that kind of thing work would be like the War for Cybertron Transformer games. But that's mostly because you'd be surprised how much stuff that they took. Despite being probably one of the darkest things that they ever made with Transformers. But getting back to the Arkham games, you know, like, from the moment Conroy speaks, like, you know, because when you're, well, I mean, I was in college when these games came out. I had just gotten a PS3.
I want to say that I had just gone to college. Like, it was probably my senior year / my freshman year of college when I started playing these. Yeah, and I played City first. I went back and played all the other ones. After the fact.
I had Asylum. Because I want to say that came out around the time I graduated high school. Then about my sophomore year, Arkham City had come out. But I remember, you know, hearing that Conroy and Hamill were coming back for this. And I was like, oh, that could be good or that could be bad. Because, you know, they haven't done it in forever. At least in my mind, they hadn't done it in forever.
Yeah.
But, like, the moment Conroy speaks as Batman and Hamill does his Joker, I was like, oh, I'm home. I like...
That's exactly the kind of sensation I had.
It was like that, like, people when they watched the trailer where Han came back on the Millennium Falcon for the first time, I was like, I'm home. You know, and again, like, Conroy and Hamill, like, if they had gotten any other actors, and you could probably argue that in the Origin series where they had characters trying to be younger versions of the two.
Yeah.
I don't think those games, like, with them and Paul Dini, if they had not been in those franchises, those games would not nearly have been as good.
Yeah, it's having them in there, having Dini writing, it was another part of the game that just clicked. Everything fired on every single cylinder.
You know, and again, like, both Hamill and Conroy do such fantastic jobs. You know, like, I'm trying to think of some, like, I always love that scene where he gets Gordon onto the boat after beating Bane, and Gordon's like, he called Dr. Young Bruja. What does it mean? It's Spanish for witch. And he, like, just, or probably my favorite from the original Arkham game is actually the recordings, the audio tapes with Scarecrow, that one at the end where it turns out that he had tricked Scarecrow the entire time. And he catches Crane, he's like, he knew you were up to something, Crane. Which is why he knew you were giving him low dosage of fear and toxin through your cologne, which is why I gave him the antitoxin. How does it feel, Crane? Are you angry? Scared? And I was like, oh. No, low key, that was just an audio recording. There's no, like stuff with it. It's just audio. And it was, like, it was so good. Like, I don't know.
Or even, like, some of the stuff in Arkham Knight was just as impactful, honestly.
You know,
the stuff with Jason at the end of it.
Yeah. Because, like, to be fair, that was originally supposed to be Conroy's swan song. Like, him and Hamill were like, we're not going to be able to keep doing this forever. You know, because, like, they were getting older. You could tell, like...
So I want to say that was... Hamill had said that was his last one... Unless they do a Killing Joke movie, then I'll come back.
The less said about that Killing Joke movie, the better.
There's a good movie in there. It's just the opening of that needs to be chopped out.
And to be fair, everyone always complains that, like, Hamill and Conroy's acting is terrible in that. It's not the acting is the problem. It is the direction.
Yeah, it's the direction.
Like, they want that movie to be so lifeless and joyless because they're trying. It's like, well, it's the Joker and Batman are like off because this is like they're both being weird here because the Joker's trying to prove and like, no, But then again, that was written by someone who didn't get the book. But going back to like both, it's kind of funny in a weird way. Like both Hamill and Conroy kind of portrayed the two as basically kind of, well, Conroy's Batman is exhausted here. He is like the events of the Arkham series, I think, has finally taken its toll on this Dark Knight. And the fact that he is slowly losing himself to the Joker, you really can feel the breaking of him. And then to make matters worse, Jason comes back to life at the same time. Which, I don't know what that would do to anybody. But I think probably the best was when Joker and Batman finally have that final fight inside his mind. Where Batman proves that the Joker is afraid of something. The fear of being forgotten by Gotham. And how Batman is like, I'm going to make sure you are forgotten. Like it really hits home how much, everyone always acts like Batman needs the Joker. And I always argue that it's the other way around.
Yeah.
Because if there's one thing a bad comedian needs, it's a straight man.
If there's one thing, if I might, there's one scene that, for me, when I was playing through Arkham Knight, that it gave me chills. Basically, it was the scene near the end when he's overcoming the fear toxin. And Crane is just like, it's impossible. He just keeps injecting him with it, and it's not doing anything.
Yeah,
you're not a human. What are you? And he does the iconic "I am vengeance" line. It sent such shivers down my spine hearing that.
Yeah.
Because it was such a callback.
Yeah.
Like that one meme, where the guy takes the bite of the food and it instantly he's transported back.
Yeah.
That was what that was for me, because I was like yes.
Yeah. Like I.
God, this makes me want to go home and play fucking Arkham, honestly.
And what's funny to me is, like, anytime, like, there's something I don't care about Batman, I always imagine how Conroy would have done it. Like, I think you and I have done, that really awful scene in Batman Begins. Where are you drugs going?
Yeah, I'm like...
But no,
that's not scary.
When you imagine because
some dude's holding you and screaming at you, that's not scary.
Because Conroy's Batman don't, like...
It would have been that lower register voice, and it would have been instantly fucking frightening.
Like that scene in Justice League where Old Man Bruce, who's not in costume, takes that Joker and interrogates him with just a cane, and he was arguably scarier than Batman. Young Batman, who's in his prime and in the costume. I was never
that naive.
It's like, this is how you interrogate someone. I was like, jeez. Or like, anytime he interrogates a thug in the Arkham games, I'll know if you're lying. Okay, dude, man, I swear I'll tell you everything. I know you would.
I'll say, and then he's also the voice of Injustice Batman, correct? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was just about to say, well, I'm not the biggest fan of Injustice because I feel like the characters are all a little off in that. I loved Conroy's delivery of the you killed Dick Grayson. He was my son. Like, that was such a good delivery for something that you could almost argue was like a throwaway line.
No.
Right before that fight starts. But again, like something about just the way Conroy delivered it made it like powerful.
Yeah. But I think I posted this in the messenger chat. I don't know if you saw it. Conroy went on to Rob Paulson's podcast one point, and they had him read lines from The Dark Knight, particularly the very end.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Which, again, proves why I'm not the biggest fan of Bale's.
It's the same as when Hamill did something similar with doing Ledger's
where he did the
lines, which were fucking frightening as hell.
No, like like, when he does those lines where he's like, I'm whatever Gotham needs me. Like, I was like, holy shit.
Redub the movie. Let's do it right now. Redub it.
I honest to God wish, like him and Paulson had just did that. Where it's just, here's Dark Knight Rises. Like, because again, it just proves how much sometimes Hollywood doesn't give a shit. Like, again, like, the Arkham games, they straight up redo the Batman Begins scene where, you know, little Bruce is taken to the GCPD. And that scene is,
and it's 1,000 times better. I mean, our friend Doug, he had never seen Mask of the Phantasm, and I had him watch it one time at my house.
Which we did that for Remember the Hyphen, not
yeah. And I just remember he had never seen it. I don't really know if he'd ever seen a Batman movie.
Yeah,
you know, but Doug, it's even despite that, he got it.
Yeah, and
I remember him mentioning like that. This movie, this has everything you need to know about the character.
Yeah,
everything you need to know. It's summed up right here.
And it's really beautifully done.
Yeah.
But yeah, and again, like, I love, probably one of my other favorites, the Batman Superman movies that they did based off the world's finest, or not world's finest, it was just Batman Superman.
Yeah. Like
him and, not George Newbern, the other guy. The second guy that did the Superman from Superman the Animated Series and onward. Like, the two of them were so great as Batman and Superman. Like, you really got the friendship between them, despite the fact that Batman never really says that to him.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that episode of the Justice League where Superman appears to die. Which, spoilers, he doesn't. You know, Batman refuses to go to the funeral. Like, because he believes that Superman is not dead. Now, whether he truly believes that or he is just trying to grieve in his own way, you know, he eventually does go to the grave after everyone else is gone and it's nighttime. And he's come up with so many, like, bad leads that go nowhere. He eventually just decides, you know, in case it truly is that you're gone, he talks to the memorial and he's like, I should have told you this when you were still here. I respect you. I hope you knew that. You taught me that sometimes justice doesn't have to come from the dark. And again, Conroy's Batman is probably one of the few Batman where I actually believe him and Superman are friends.
Yeah.
Super friends. And it...
Go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, that's one of the biggest good points for the Justice League cartoon is how well Supes and Batman play off each other. You know, I don't think any other Batman Superman thing has ever really captured that.
Yeah.
Except for maybe that Super Sons movie that they've made, which I haven't seen yet. But
one thing I'm grateful to, even if I didn't like a lot of the stuff in it, is that Kevin got to play Bruce in a live action property on, you know, Crisis on Infinite Earths. I'm not a big fan of what they did with the character in that, but the fact that he was able to do it.
Yeah. I mean, granted, to be fair with that version of the character, it's like
Kingdom Come.
It's Kingdom Come mixed with Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah, but just imagine that. Like this man who had played the character so many times but had never been behind, like, in front of the camera for it, finally got to do it. You know, and I argue he's on actually, I take it back. Unarguably, he's probably the best part of the entire fucking crossover.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of stuff in it that I'm not a fan of.
Yeah. Like that scene where he tells Supergirl and Batwoman, you know, Clark's parents taught him that the world was just and you could fix it. My parents taught me a very different lesson. But the world doesn't make sense unless you force it to.
Yeah, it's like it's beyond if he were even more broke, basically.
Yeah, like, because when they did the Dark Knight Returns, which in my opinion this was like the biggest misstep of this movie, was that they got who I love the actor Peter Weller, aka RoboCop, to be Batman in that. And while he does a great job, imagine if Conroy was doing that Batman, like how much he would have given to that role.
Yeah.
Like, that's, like I imagine that scene where, you know, he... Because to be fair, the first chapter of Dark Knight Returns is probably the best of it, if I'm really being honest, where, you know, Two-Face gets the surgery that finally fixes his face, but instead of fixing him, he just thinks that they made both bad sides. And him and Harvey have that moment where Bruce captures him and he's like, take a look what they've done to me. What do you see? I see a reflection, Harvey. I see a reflection. Like, I wish he had gotten to do that one, because that would have been amazing.
Yeah.
But I think we've really talked a lot about it, so I think we might round this up here.
Yeah.
Not just because I think we've gone on a while. It is the middle of November, and we are doing this in a car.
Yeah, and I'm almost glad we waited a little bit to film this, because I'm gonna be honest, like, if we had filmed that night,
yeah,
I don't think I would have been in any emotional good spot to really talk at length.
Yeah.
I know there was I had thought I was handling it okay-ish that day until I saw Mark's tweet about it, and that kind of just killed me a little bit, honestly.
Yeah, it's hard, especially because I honestly feel I don't think Hamill's gonna reprise the role of the Joker after.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would really blame him if that's what happened.
Because I don't.
It was like I don't think I can do it anymore.
Well, then I don't think. You know, in a weird way, it kind of shows how the two of them are yin and yang. Like, you can't do
have
that
one
Joker without that Batman. But as a final aside, we've talked about this episode hundreds of times, but I think this is like the first time we ever truly saw two Batmans on screen at the same time, which was the animated episode Beware the Great Ghost. You know, where Adam West plays this aging actor who's playing a Batman-like character, and how that character inspired Bruce to become Batman. And in my opinion, was one of the reasons why Adam West's Batman got the recognition it should have always gotten. That, like, the fact that, like, this serious cartoon could point out how important the 66 show was, you know, to Batman. And also giving Adam West, I think, the recognition he deserved for playing Batman.
Yeah.
Like, because, well, he didn't, like, suffer terribly under the role, because, like, he got amazing amounts of money from playing.
Yeah.
But, like, he did say...
So much of the fandom was just split on that show.
Yeah. And which, it's sad that only after his death, I think really a lot of people begin to appreciate.
Like, I remember when we first started talking about stuff, I remember even being hesitant to bring that up to you, being like, so do you like the 60s show?
Yeah.
Because I think I had asked somebody that once before, and they had been like, no, that thing is fucking goofy, I don't like it. And I was like, I kind of like it.
Yeah, I'm kind of sad that it took me, and like during my teenage years and a lot of my college years, I kind of wrote it off as being a campy, silly, stupid show. Now that I'm older, I appreciate that take of Batman, because it represents where Batman was at that time, or at least what people believe Batman was at that time. You know, it was silly. There were colorful characters, and you know, like, nobody got hurt. But at the same time, it knew it was goofy.
Yeah.
Like, it was unbelievably funny. Like, you and I still laugh at that scene with Batman, if you had
start pounding
Joker. Like, as a side, I wish I could have gotten to, like, a con. I was like, I would have loved to be like,
can you do that?
Ooh, Batman, if you had this.
You could have pieced that together and it would have been great.
And then hearing Conroy's Batman being like, start pounding, Joker. Like, it would have been. But
there's almost on a final note, there's almost a poetic sense to. I think that's what made the artwork I've seen, because I've seen a couple pieces of it, of Adam West's Batman.
Yeah. Like,
you know, taking Kevin's Batman to the afterlife. You know, whatever form of the afterlife you subscribe to. I think it's poetic in a sense, you know, is like, whereas Kevin's portrayal of Batman helped uplift Adam's portrayal of Batman to a, you know, to a higher plateau of respect in the community. You could almost argue that it's like, in a way, Kevin's portrayal of Batman saved Adam's Batman.
Yeah.
You could almost argue it's a poetic sense of, you know, Adam, I'm sure somewhere, again, whatever sense of the afterlife is subscribed to, I'm sure he was probably one of the ones waiting for Kevin on the other side.
Yeah. And I know how important Conroy was to people. He, before his death, he had actually recently come out as being, I want to say, bisexual.
I think so. If I messed that up, I apologize.
I apologize too, but like basically he'd come out as being LGBTQ, and I think that meant a lot to people that grew up with this character. You know, it's hard imagining a world without Conroy's Batman. Because he has been a part of my life since childhood.
Yeah. I think that's probably why that one hit a lot harder, I think, than a lot of other celebrity deaths probably. You know, I say what you will, when you're so ingrained into a fandom like we are, you get attached to these actors. I mean, if it had been like Mark, I think you and I would have been just as devastated, honestly.
You know, honestly, I don't know how to end this. Kevin, wherever you are, just know that you are loved, and that there are so many Robins and Cape Crusaders who would not have put the tights on if not for you. And that you have created a legacy that will live on forever. Because I don't know what else to say except that you were Batman. And you always will be. At least to me and this guy right here. Yeah. Enough said. So anyways, we thank you all for coming tonight. Or whenever you're watching this. And just remember that, you know, because I don't think Conroy's Batman would have wanted you to give up just because it hurt. You know, be the person that Batman would want you to be, I think, would be the... Yeah. That's going to wrap it up for this one, guys. I'm Adam.
I'm Golden.
And take care.